Before I share my own story about how I went from feeling like an invisible, unpaid babysitter to reclaiming my own life, I want to share something important. If you've ever felt taken for granted or like you've given so much of yourself to your family that you're not even sure who you are anymore, please know this. You are not alone, and your story is far from over. My journey was about finding my voice after decades of silence. A resource that truly helped me on this path was a book called Coming Back to Myself, 60 Liberating Truths to Find Yourself Again. It's full of powerful, simple truths that feel like talking to a wise friend. If you're feeling lost and need a little strength to find your way back, I can't recommend it enough. You'll find it in the pinned comment below. Now, let's get into the story of how I finally said enough. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. What's coming next will show you how everything can change with just one decision. You know, there comes a time when a mother's love isn't enough. I had spent the last decade quietly folding their laundry, cooking their meals, and stepping into the role of their unpaid babysitter without ever being asked for my permission. It was just expected, and somehow I let it go on. My name is Angela Curtis. I'm 67 years old, and as I stood in my kitchen this morning scrambling eggs, I realized I wasn't even making breakfast for myself. The sizzling in the pan wasn't for me. It was for my son, Willie, and his wife, Nina. My kitchen is modest, but I keep it clean. It's here in Scottsdale, a nice area, full of people with busy, important lives. My son and his wife are two of them. They're building their careers, making a name for themselves. I should be proud, and I am. I truly am. But as I scooped the eggs onto a plate, I felt that familiar, quiet resentment. It's a feeling I've tried to push down for years. It feels ugly. It feels ungrateful, but it's there. I've always put my family first. That's what mothers do, isn't it? When Willie and Nina had their first child, I was overjoyed. Of course I'd help. That's what grandmothers do. I'd come over in the morning so Nina could get to the office early. I'd stay late so they could go to work dinners. Then the second child came, and the helping out just solidified. It turned from a favor into a job I never applied for and certainly never got paid for. My life, my entire routine has become a cage. A nice, comfortable cage, but still a cage. I wake up, I get dressed, and I go to their house. Or they drop the kids at mine. I make meals, I clean up spills, I fold laundry, so much laundry. I read stories, I kiss scraped knees. Then I go home, eat something simple for dinner, watch a little TV, and go to bed, just to wake up and do it all over again. Willie and Nina, they're good kids, but they don't see it. They don't see me. They see a solution. They see a reliable, free babysitter who also keeps their house in order. They've never really truly appreciated the sacrifice, not in a way that matters. They'll say, "Mom, you're a lifesaver," as they're rushing out the door, coats half on, already checking their phones. But they've never once asked, "Mom, what did you want to do today?" I don't think they mean to be unkind. They're just wrapped up in their own world, and I'm just part of the furniture. The children are sweet, and I love them dearly, but my whole world has shrunk down to their school schedules and their favorite snacks. I've completely neglected my own desires. I used to love painting. My easel has a thick coat of dust on it in the garage. I used to meet my friend Clara for coffee. I can't remember the last time I saw her. This morning, as I was wiping down my own counter after making their breakfast, I caught my reflection in the microwave door. I saw the silver in my hair, the wrinkles around my eyes, and for a second, I didn't recognize myself. I just saw a tired old woman. And I remembered. I remembered being 30 and the dreams I had. I remembered being 50 and the plans I had for this time in my life. I was supposed to be traveling. I was supposed to be painting again. I was supposed to be me. I wasn't supposed to be the constant fixture in someone else's life. I wasn't supposed to be the unpaid help. I love my family. I do. But as I stood there in the quiet of my own kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had given everything away for free. And I was starting to wonder what, if anything, I had left for myself.
That feeling I'd had in the kitchen, it didn't go away. It just sat there, simmering under the surface for the next couple of weeks. I kept doing what I always did, going to their house, watching the kids, cleaning up. I tried to tell myself I was being overly sensitive, but then came the moment it all shifted. It was an evening, a Thursday, I think. I was exhausted. The kids were finally in their pajamas, watching a show on their tablets. I was in Willie and Nina's kitchen, wiping down the counters after making dinner for everyone. They were on the sofa in the living room, laptops open, planning their big family vacation. I could hear them talking about resorts and flight costs. "It's just so much, Will," Nina sighed. She was stressed. I could hear it in her voice. "I don't know how we're going to swing the upgraded room, but with the 2 kids..." I finished wiping the stove and turned around, leaning against the counter. "It all sounds wonderful," I said, trying to be supportive. "You 2 deserve a break." "It's not just a break, Mom, it's a necessity," Willie said. He didn't look up from his screen. "We are, and we really need help paying for it all. These extras are just adding up." I was about to say something encouraging like, "Oh, I'm sure you'll figure it out." But before I could get the words out, Willie laughed. He looked up from his laptop and he looked right at me. He had this casual, joking smile on his face. "Well, Mom," he said, "you're basically already our full-time babysitter. Why don't you pitch in for the trip?" He chuckled again, as if he'd just said the cleverest thing. Nina smiled too, a little tiredly. They both looked at me, waiting for me to laugh along. But I couldn't. It was like all the air had been forced out of my lungs. That simple, thoughtless joke, it didn't feel like a joke. It hit me like a ton of bricks. My first impulse was to just laugh it off, to say, "Oh, you're funny," and change the subject. It's what I had always done. But I was frozen. All I could think about were the last 10 years. I thought about all the mornings I'd gotten up in the dark to be at their house before 6 a.m. I thought about the plans I'd canceled with my own friends. I thought about my bad knee, the one that aches every single night from sitting on their floor playing with blocks. I thought about my painting easel, covered in a sheet in my garage, an old dream I'd put away. I had given them my time, my health, my own life. And it was all just a joke. In their minds, my contribution wasn't a sacrifice. It wasn't a gift. It was something so worthless that it was funny to suggest I should pay them for the privilege of doing it. My entire life had been reduced to a punchline. I have to go," I managed to say. My voice sounded strange, even to me. "Okay, Mom. See you in the morning. Love you," Willie called out. He and Nina had already turned back to their laptops before I even reached the door. I got into my car and just sat there in their driveway, in the dark. I didn't even start the engine. I just stared at their bright, warm house. For years, I had brushed it off. I had made excuses for them. They're busy. They're stressed. They don't mean it. But I couldn't brush this off. This was different. This wasn't just a thoughtless comment. This was the truth, spoken out loud. This was how they saw me. And for the first time, I truly questioned my role in this family. I wasn't mom or grandma anymore. I was the help. I finally put the key in the ignition, and as the engine turned over, I felt something inside me click in the place. It was a cold, hard feeling. I wasn't going to be a joke anymore. Something had to change. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying that one stupid sentence over and over. Why don't you pitch in for the trip? The anger I'd felt in the driveway had cooled down into something else, something hard and clear. It was resolve. I'd spent a decade making myself small so their lives could be big. I'd bent myself into whatever shape they needed, a cook, a maid, a babysitter, and I'd done it so gradually I hadn't even noticed I'd lost my own. When my phone buzzed on the nightstand at 7 a.m., I knew exactly what it was. Nina's, "Are you coming over? We're running late," text. I looked at it, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't jump out of bed. I didn't text back, "On my way." I just rolled over and closed my eyes. It was a small, quiet rebellion, but it felt like an earthquake. After another hour, I got up. I made coffee for myself. I sat at my own kitchen table and drank it, slowly while it was still hot. It was amazing. I thought about my life. I had been the pillar for everyone else. I'd held them all up. But I was so tired. I finally truly asked myself that question. What about me? What about Angela? What did I want to do today? My phone buzzed again. This time, I just silenced it. I put it on the counter, face down. I felt a little sick with guilt, but I also felt light. I went into the garage and pulled the dusty sheet off my old easel. The smell of old canvas and dried paint hit me. I ran my fingers over the stiff bristles of a brush. I had loved this. Why had I stopped? Oh, right, because I was always too busy helping them. So I started small. I didn't answer Nina's text right away. When she finally called, I let it go to voicemail. A few hours later, I simply texted back, "Sorry, I can't today. I have an appointment." I didn't have one, but it wasn't really a lie. I had an appointment with myself. I went for a walk, not a pushing a stroller to the park walk, a real walk. I put in my earbuds, I walked fast, and I went to the little community center a few miles away. I hadn't been inside in years. I saw a flyer on the board, Introduction to Watercolor, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. I signed up. That week was a revelation. I went to the coffee shop and read a book. I called my old friend Clara, and we met for lunch. She was so surprised to hear from me. "Angela, I thought you'd been kidnapped by your grandkids," she said, only half joking. We talked for 2 hours. The next Tuesday, I went to that painting class. My hands were a little shaky, but as soon as I put that wet brush to the paper and watched the blue color bleed across it, I felt a piece of my old self click back into place. I wasn't just a babysitter. I was Angela. And Angela liked to paint. Of course, the family started noticing. The tension was building. The small acts of freedom were creating big waves in their world. First, it was the text from Nina. They started as confused, then moved to passive-aggressive. "The kids really miss you. I had to scramble to find a sitter for my meeting today. Please let me know your schedule." "Are you upset about something?" I just kept it simple. "I'm fine, just taking some time for myself." Then Willie called. His voice was laced with that "I'm the reasonable one" tone. "Hey, Mom, what's going on? You've been distant. Nina's worried you're not around to help with the kids." "I've just been busy, Willie," I said. My heart was pounding. It's so hard to break a pattern of a lifetime. "Busy with what?" he asked, not unkindly, just confused, like he couldn't imagine what I could possibly be busy with other than him. "With my life," I said. There was a pause on the line. Okay, well, Nina really needs you for this weekend. She has a big deadline. I felt the pressure, that familiar pull to just give in, to make things easy for them, to be the lifesaver again. But I thought about that joke. I thought about my paintbrushes. I'm sorry, son, I said, and my voice was steadier than I had expected. I'm not available this weekend. I hung up, and the quiet in my house was almost deafening. But it was my quiet. I'd reclaimed it, and I wasn't going to give it back.
I thought telling Willie no would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The rest of that week was quiet, too quiet. They were scrambling, and I knew it. Part of me felt that familiar twist of guilt. I kept picturing Nina, stressed out, trying to manage work and the kids. I almost picked up the phone a dozen times to say, "Don't worry, I'll come over." But I didn't. I went to my painting class. I read a novel in my backyard. I slept a full 8 hours for the first time in memory. Then came the breaking point. It was Friday night, late. I was already in my nightgown, just about to turn off the light and go to sleep. My phone rang, and the screen lit up with Nina's name. My stomach dropped. A call this late could only mean one of two things, a real emergency or a manufactured one. I answered. "Nina, is everything okay?" "Angela, thank God you answered." She sounded completely frazzled. I could hear one of the kids crying in the background. I'm so far behind on this work project. I'm going to get in serious trouble. I can't find a babysitter for this weekend. No one is available." I stayed quiet, just listening. "Angela, we really need you this weekend," she said, her voice tight with stress. "Willie and I have plans tomorrow night, and you're the only one who can help. We're counting on you." Counting on me. That phrase. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, an expectation. All my patience, all my quiet understanding, it just evaporated. It was gone. My frustration, which had been simmering for a decade and building for a week, finally boiled over. This wasn't about a work project. This wasn't about one weekend. This was about my entire life. I'd spent years sacrificing everything for them, and they didn't just appreciate it, they expected it. They'd built their entire lives, their careers, their social plans right on top of the foundation of my free labor, and they never once stopped to see if that foundation was cracking. "Nina," I said, and my voice was cold. I didn't recognize it. "I told Willie I am not available this weekend." There was a sharp silence. "Not available?" she repeated, as if I'd just spoken a foreign language. "Angela, this is serious. I could lose this account. What could you possibly be doing that's more important than your family?" And that was it. That was the moment. The realization hit me so hard, I actually sat down on the edge of my bed. No one had ever asked me if this was the life I wanted. No one had ever asked me, "Mom, are you happy?" Or, "Grandma, what are your dreams?" They just took. They took my time, my energy, my youth, my plans, and they never even said please. It was just my responsibility. And that joke, Willie's joke about me pitching in for their vacation, it wasn't a joke at all. It was the truth. I was an asset to be used. "I have my own plans, Nina." "What plans? Painting?" She scoffed, and the disrespect in her voice was like gasoline on a fire. "Angela, this is not the time for your new little hobby. We need you." "No," I said, and this time the word was solid. It was a period, a full stop. "I don't need you, Nina. You expect me, and I'm done." I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for her to reply. I just pressed the button. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was from release. I stood up and walked to my closet. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to get dressed. I wasn't going to let this fester. I wasn't going to let them text and call and guilt trip me all night. I was going to end this, tonight or first thing in the morning. I decided to wait.
I would not go over there in the middle of the night, emotional and angry. I would sleep, and I would walk into their home tomorrow morning with a firm decision in my heart. The days of the silent caregiver, the woman who gives and gives until there's nothing left, were over. I was done. The only question was, how were they going to take it? Frankly, as I turned off the light, I realized, for the first time, I didn't care.
I slept. I actually slept. When I woke up on Saturday morning, the sun was streaming in, and that frantic, boiling anger from the night before was gone. All that was left was a perfectly calm, quiet clarity. I knew exactly what I had to do. I took my time, I made my coffee, I got dressed in my good slacks and a nice blouse, not my usual grandma uniform of leggings and an old t-shirt. I did my hair. I put on a little lipstick. I was preparing for a business meeting, in a way, the business of my own life. I drove to their house. I didn't call first. I used my key, just like I always did. I walked in. The house was a mess. Toys everywhere, breakfast dishes piled in the sink. Nina was at the kitchen counter on her laptop, her hair a mess, looking exhausted. Willie was trying to pour cereal for the kids, who were both fussy. They both looked up when I came in. Nina's face was a mix of relief and anger. "Angela, finally," she snapped. "I've been calling. Did you just ignore me all night? I told you I have a deadline." Willie looked relieved. "Hey, Mom, thanks for coming. We're in a real bind." They just assumed. After everything, they still assumed I was there to pick up the pieces. "Good morning," I said. My voice was calm and even. "I'm not here to babysit. Turn off the TV, kids. Willie, Nina, please sit down on the sofa. We need to talk." My tone stopped them cold. It wasn't my angry mom voice. It was something else, something they hadn't heard before. Nina's mouth opened, then closed. Willie just blinked, wiped his hands on a dish towel, and guided Nina to the living room. I sat in the armchair opposite them. I didn't fidget. I just looked at them. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my life, about my role in this family. Nina started to interrupt. "Angela, if this is about last night, I was just stressed." "This isn't about last night," I said, cutting her off, but still keeping my voice level. "This is about the last 10 years. For 10 years, I have been your cook, your maid, and your full-time, unpaid babysitter. I've done it because I love you, but I've also done it because it was just expected." They were both silent, staring. "Willie, your joke the other night about me pitching in for your vacation, it wasn't funny. It was the truth. You've been taking what I give for so long, you don't even see it as a gift anymore. You see it as an obligation, my obligation." Willie opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked stunned, like he genuinely never thought of it that way. "So," I continued, taking a breath, "things are going to change, starting today. I am retiring." "Retiring?" Willie choked out. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I am retiring from being your solution. I'm retiring from being the person who drops everything to fix your schedules. I've spent years taking care of everyone else, and I've forgotten about myself. And I'm done." I leaned forward. "If you want me to keep helping out, it's not going to be for free anymore. If you want me to keep helping, I'll need something in return." Nina finally found her voice. It was small, disbelieving. "Something in return? From your own son?" "Yes. My time is valuable. My health is valuable. My life is valuable. I'm not just a grandma. I am Angela, and I have plans." They were completely taken aback, just speechless.
The whole power dynamic of our family, the one that had been in place for a decade, had just crumbled in front of them. "So, here are my terms," I said, as calmly as if I was discussing a grocery list. "First, I am no longer your default babysitter. You need to find actual paid childcare. I am happy to be a grandmother. I will come for dinners. I will take the kids to the park on a Saturday if I am available. But my days as your full-time nanny are over. Second, I want to take a vacation. A real one. By myself. I've been saving, but I haven't been able to go because I'm always on call for you. I'm booking a trip. And third, I want some help. You're both adults. You can hire a cleaner. You can manage your own schedules. I am going back to my painting classes. I am going to see my friends. I am going to live for myself again." I stood up. They were still sitting there, just staring. Their faces were a blank canvas of shock. They thought I would always be there, just like the sofa they were sitting on, quiet, comfortable, and always available. I'd finally shown them I wasn't furniture. I was a person, and I was done being taken for granted.
I didn't wait for them to respond. I just turned and walked to the door. I heard Willie finally scramble to his feet. "Mom, wait," he called out. His voice wasn't calm anymore. It was shaky. You can't just do this. We're your family." I paused with my hand on the doorknob and turned back. Nina had stood up now too. Her face, which had been pale with shock, was now red with anger. "Family?" she said, her voice sharp. "Is that what this is? You're just walking out? After everything we've done for you?" I blinked. "Everything you've done for me? Nina, I live in my own house. I pay my own bills." "We include you in our lives," she shot back. "We let you be a part of the kids' lives. Most grandmothers would be grateful for that. And now you're, what, sending us a bill?" "I'm not asking for money, Nina. I'm asking for my life back," I said, my voice still quiet. It seemed to make them even angrier. "This is unbelievable," Willie said, running his hands through his hair. "Mom, we depend on you. We've built our lives, our careers around you being here. You can't just pull the rug out from under us. That's not fair." "And what you've been doing to me for 10 years, is that fair, Willie?" I asked. "Was it fair when you joked about me paying for your vacation? Was it fair to just assume I had no life, no plans, no desires of my own?" "You can't just walk away from family responsibilities," Nina said, folding her arms. That was the line, the one I knew was coming, the one that had held me prisoner for a decade. "This isn't a family responsibility, Nina. This is a job. You don't ask family to work for you 40 hours a week for free. You hire an employee. I am your mother, and I am their grandmother. I am not your staff." "You're being selfish, Mom," Willie said, and his words stung. "We're a family. We're supposed to help each other. I'd do anything for you." "Would you?" I asked. "When was the last time you asked me if I needed anything? When was the last time you offered to help me just because?" Family doesn't work on one person's shoulders alone, Willie. You and Nina, you're both smart, successful adults. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You can't just lean on me until I break." They just stared at me. They had no answer for that. They were upset, but I could see in their eyes they didn't really understand. They just felt attacked. They saw me as the one who was being unreasonable. They couldn't see the years of sacrifice. They could only see the inconvenience I was causing them right now. I turned and opened the door. "So that's it?
Nina called after me, her voice desperate now. "You're just leaving? What are we supposed to do this weekend?" "I guess you'll have to figure it out. Willie will have to cancel his plans, or you'll have to call in a favor from one of your friends. It's not my problem to solve." I closed the door behind me. I walked to my car, got in, and just sat there for a full minute, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The quiet was almost as loud as the argument. I felt awful. A huge, crushing wave of guilt washed over me. I had just walked out on my son. I had just told my daughter-in-law, who was clearly drowning in work, that I wouldn't help. A part of me, the mother part, was screaming at me to go back in there, to smooth it all over, to say, "I'm sorry, of course I'll watch the kids." It would be so easy to go back, so easy to fall into the old routine. But then, under the guilt, I felt something else. It was a tiny spark, but it was there. Relief. I was relieved. I had finally said it. I had stood my ground. The world hadn't ended. They were angry, yes, but they were also fine. They were adults. They would figure it out. I felt guilty, yes, but I also felt free. I knew this was the start of something new for me. It was going to be hard. There would be more fights, more guilt. But as I started the car and pulled away from their curb, I knew deep in my bones that I had done the right thing. I was finally choosing myself, and I was ready to see what that felt like.
The first few weeks were strange. The silence in my house was enormous. My phone, which had always buzzed constantly with demands and quick questions, was quiet. It was like a storm had passed, and I was left standing in the wreckage, not sure what to do next. The guilt was still there. It gnawed at me, especially in the evenings. I imagined them struggling, Nina trying to cook while a child was crying, Willie coming home late from work to a chaotic house. I was their mother. I should be helping. But then I would wake up in the morning. And for the first time in a decade, my first thought wasn't, what do they need? My first thought was, what do I want? I started making my coffee and sitting on my little patio. I'd just sit there for an hour, watching the hummingbirds, sipping my coffee while it was still hot. It felt decadent. It felt selfish in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. And I have to admit, I loved it. I went back to my watercolor class. I was terrible at first. My hand was unsteady, but I kept going. I bought new brushes, I bought a big pad of thick paper, and I painted. I painted simple things. A lemon from my neighbor's tree, the bougainvillea spilling over my fence. With every brushstroke, I felt a little more like Angela. I started volunteering at the community center, the one I'd signed up at. Just 2 mornings a week, reading to the toddlers. They were sweet, and at the end of my 2-hour shift, I got to go home. To my home. And I walked. I put on my good walking shoes, and I just walked, exploring my own neighborhood, listening to podcasts. I felt stronger. My knee even started to ache a little less. And that vacation I told them I wanted, I booked it. A 7-day cruise to Alaska. All by myself. The day I clicked confirm payment, my hand was shaking more than it did when I was painting. It was the most selfish thing I had ever done. Of course, the quiet from Willie and Nina didn't last. After that first week of silence, the texts started. Not from Nina. She was clearly too angry. They were from Willie. The kids are asking for you. That one hurt. I waited a few hours before I answered. I'd love to see them. How might I take them to the park on Saturday for 2 hours? He texted back. We really need you for the whole day. Nina has to work." I took a deep breath. "I'm available from 10 to 12. Let me know if that works." He didn't reply. They didn't take me up on the offer. They were still trying to punish me, trying to make me feel so guilty I would come running back and everything would go back to normal. But I realized normal was killing me. A few days later, Willie called. "Mom, this isn't working. The house is a mess. We're spending a fortune on babysitters who keep canceling. The kids just miss their grandma. Can't we just talk about this? Can't things go back to the way they were?" His voice was tired. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just worn out. And I finally understood. "Willie," I said, and my voice was kind, but it was firm. "I miss the kids too, but things can't go back to the way they were. I can't go back. The way things were, it was only working for you and Nina. It wasn't working for me." Slowly, I think they started to realize. They had to. They were juggling everything they'd once just dumped on my shoulders. Their carefully balanced life, their 2 careers, their social plans, it all depended on me. And now that I was gone, the whole thing was wobbling. I heard from my friend Clara that Nina had complained at a neighborhood meeting about how hard it was to find reliable childcare. It was a strange feeling. They were only just beginning to appreciate what I had done all those years, for free. And now it was too late to reverse the changes. I wasn't that person anymore. I felt free. But it wasn't a simple, happy freedom. It was complicated. It came with consequences. My relationship with my son was strained. I wasn't seeing my grandchildren as much. But I was proud of myself. I was proud that I had finally stood up for what I needed. I was 67 years old, and I was finally learning how to live life on my own terms. A few more weeks passed. My trip to Alaska was booked and paid for. I'd finished 3 paintings that I was actually proud of, and they were hanging in my hallway. I was meeting Clara for coffee twice a week. My life was mine. It was quiet, and it was good. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was Nina. My heart didn't leap into my throat. I didn't feel that old panic or guilt. I just looked at it. She hadn't called me, not once, since our confrontation. It had only been Willie. I let it ring one more time, took a breath, and answered. "Hello, Nina." "Angela. Hi." Her voice was small, not angry, not stressed, just hesitant. "Hi. How are you?" "I'm doing well, Nina. And you?" There was a long pause. I could hear her take a breath. We're okay. We're managing. We hired a part-time nanny. She's expensive, but she's good." "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. "I'm glad you found someone." "Yeah, look, I know I haven't been great." She was struggling, and I just stayed quiet. I let her talk. The thing is, she finally said the nanny had a family emergency, and she had to cancel for this afternoon. And I have a doctor's appointment. It's not an emergency, just a checkup I've had to reschedule 3 times. And Willie is stuck in a meeting he can't get out of. I was wondering, I know you're busy, but could you maybe, just for a few hours, just until Willie gets home at 5? The old Angela would have said yes before she even finished the sentence. The old Angela would have already been grabbing her keys. But I was the new Angela. So I thought about it. I looked at my wall
at the painting of the lemons I just finished. I was free this afternoon. I was just going to read in the garden. Angela, are you still there? She asked, her voice faltering. I'm here, Nina. Yes, I can help you today. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Angela. She stopped. She didn't say lifesaver. But Nina, I said, my voice still gentle, but very clear. We need to be on the same page about this. I'm happy to help out in a real pinch like this. I love the kids, but I need you to respect my boundaries. This isn't just a favor I'm expected to do. I'm not your babysitter anymore. This is me, as a grandmother, choosing to help. I know, she said, and for the first time, I think she really did. I understand, absolutely. Just for a few hours. I really appreciate it. I'll be over in 20 minutes. And I hung up. And I went. I played with my grandchildren for 2 hours. I read them stories and we drew pictures. It was lovely. And when Willie walked in the door at 5 o'clock on the dot, I packed up my purse. Thanks, Mom, he said. He looked tired, but he gave me a real smile. It means a lot. I said, it was good to see you all. And I kissed the kids, and I left. That evening, I sat by my living room window with a cup of tea, watching the sky turn pink. The house was quiet. My house. My quiet. I'm not the silent one behind the scenes anymore. I'm not the unpaid help, the one who was just expected to be there. I'm Angela. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I'm a painter. I'm a woman who is about to see a glacier in Alaska. My relationship with Willie and Nina is different. It's not as easy as it was for them. It's more honest. It's real. And I think in time, it will be better. I'm no longer their babysitter. I'm their family. I finally learned at 67 years old that no isn't a bad word. It's a necessary one. It's the word that saved me. I'm living life on my own terms, and it feels right. So I want to ask you, what would you do if your family suddenly realized you've been the one holding everything together all these years? Would you continue to give, or would you finally say enough is enough? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We've all been there in one way or another, and I'd love to hear your story. And if my story resonated with you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. It really does help, and I'm so glad we could share this time together. Lastly, remember to download this wonderful book called Coming Back to Myself, 60 Liberating Truths to Find Yourself Again. You'll find it in the pinned comment below. Now, if you like this story, go ahead and click on the next video appearing on your screen, because in it is a story of betrayal and revolt like you've never seen before on Her Kindle Stories.